Alright, so about middle of the day, we're out doing some scouting. This is a brand new area, never been into it. So what I like to look for on OnX is a spot with a lot of diversity. It's obviously the easiest to key in on an aerial map. You know, if I don't see a lot of diversity, I generally don't mess with it. But this area right here, what we've got is a little clear cut on the side of this ridge. There's a power line right away that cuts through the top of it, and it's all planted in warm season grasses. So you've got the right of way, the clear cut, and then the OnX is showing oaks down here right on the edge of this clear cut. So you got 3 good transition lines right there. So we're gonna dive off into here and check it out. And I'm already seeing some historical rubs right up here on the side of this hill. So that tells me that there's at some point some bucks in here. So we're gonna go in here and check it out and see what it looks like. Yeah, so we're walking down the edge of this clear cut, and we just crossed one trail coming out, and then we just come to another one, super heavy trail. So we're just walking this transition line, marking all of the trails that come out. And typically there'll be one that is used more than the others, but you know, it's always good to mark all this stuff so you can kind of put a picture together in your head of how they're using the area. So a thing that me and Rob noticed the other day when we were scouting another area was around all these white oaks, there was a lot of historical buck sign, old rubs, but we noticed that there wasn't any from last year, and maybe not even the year prior. The trees had really grown up, and you could tell they'd been rubbed. So that tells me those white oaks haven't dropped probably in a year or two. So if you're not seeing any sign from the year prior, it probably means those oaks haven't dropped in a year or two. So, you know, glass the oaks, look up in there with your binos and see if there's any acorns. That's what I do, and that's how I tell if, you know, they're gonna start dropping soon. So that's something to pay attention to. We've jumped quite a few, like 4 or 5 deer at this point, bedded in this clear cut right here. We're walking down this little grassy lane, and there's a few acorns on the ground here, a couple with the tops popped off, and you could tell a deer's been eating them when they've got that little chip taken out of the top of them like that. That's where they use their bottom teeth to bust the acorn apart. So there's definitely deer staying right here, feeding right here. So this white oak right here on the edge of this clearing is absolutely loaded, and we haven't seen too many trees on this trip that have acorns like that. Now, if you look up in it, it's kind of subtle, but all the leaves are kind of drooping down, and as soon as I saw it, I knew there was acorns in it, just by the way, you know, all the leaves are drooping down with all that weight. But yeah, this tree right here, this would be a good spot to key in on whenever it starts dropping. Looks like they might be rotten. Some of these ones I picked up, they looked a little rotten, so I was just cutting a few of them open to see if they were good or not. And that's another thing too. When that wind picked up a little bit, that tree was just raining acorns. So that's another thing, as you're just walking through the woods, just listen. All right, so this is a pretty obvious thing, but no matter where you're at in the woods, if you come across a little moist spot that holds tracks, check it for tracks, because I have found several big bucks just by finding a big track, and that kind of keys you in on an area. So I come to a little spot like this, I always look it over and see if there's a big track in it possibly. A lot of times you won't find one, but sometimes you will. So a little spot like this, there's quite a few deer tracks in it, but they all look like does and fawns. So just one more thing to watch out for. It's pretty obvious, but you know, every little piece of the puzzle helps. All right, so earlier we talked about doe and fawn tracks. This is a big buck track. So 4 fingers wide, that's a big mature buck. I mean, you got the edge of it right here, and my 4 fingers fit right inside of there. Now, I've seen mature bucks that were a 3-finger track, but when you find a 4-finger track, that's definitely a big one. All right, so we just walked up from that white oak here, and there's a fresh rub right here. It's fairly high on the tree, so I'd say it's probably a decent buck. Big old pile of poop right there. The rub itself is fairly high up off the ground, and you can see where he's rubbed his forehead and the base of his antlers all the way up into here. Just pay attention to those little details even in the rubs, and it'll sometimes tell you what kind of buck you're dealing with. This isn't the best example, but this is the only rub we have at the moment, so. There's a big one. Now that is a big rub. No, but like this one here, it's real dried out. The bark has kind of started to regrow on the edges. So this one's definitely from last year. Now this one down here I think is possibly from this year. We'll go down and check. But so we've got that little clearing down here. We've got the white oak right there. Man, they've just found another rub right down here. So these bucks are obviously traveling right through here. It looks kind of dry. So I think this rub here is from this year. I'm pretty sure. It's a little dried out, but all the shavings are still on top of the leaves. Decent sized tree. There's marks all the way up into here, so I'd say there's a pretty decent buck somewhere in here. So we just followed that rub line up to the edge of this clear cut. Right as we got to the edge, jumped a buck up right there. Bedded right on the edge, probably watching out. I mean, I got pretty close to him. We're gonna go up here and see if we can't find his bed. Big bed, giant bed right here. I mean, giant. Full of hair. Exit barrel that way. Full of hair. With this thick grass back behind him. And he can see pretty good ways, almost all the way down to that clearing we were just in. The direction, so we'd slip in and we could probably get, I bet we could get within 60 yards of this bed. There's a giant rub up there. Fresh rub here, giant rub up there. Let's go check it out. Fresh rub here, and we got a real big one up here it looks like, and there's another one down here, it's just shredded. Bed right here too. I would say what most of these beds in here are is probably bucks monitoring does closer to the rut. That's what it looks like to me. Alright guys, I hope that helps you out a little bit. That's just how I personally break down a piece of public property. So hunt in the morning instead of going back to camp and taking a nap or eating lunch, take lunch with you, scout midday, and then just pile up those spots like that. So the more spots you have that you can bounce around to, the better. So you never know what you're going to find. You got to get boots on the ground. You know, you can get close with aerial scouting, but boots on the ground is where you really figure things out and find these little hidden spots that you really can't see on a map. So get out there, explore new ground, have fun with it, and good luck.